Greetings, everyone! It is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. I hope you're in for a good one today. We're going to be chatting about Pathfinder 2nd Edition again. I have, of course, my core rulebook here, just for when we need it. And I'll be referencing things and using the Archives of Nethys, which we've discussed is the free resource that anybody can use to get this information. So as much as it is helpful to have a core rulebook, a PDF of it, or a physical copy of it, of course, having the Archives of Nethys is the next best thing, as it will provide you with all the information you need. So we'll be talking about that, and hopefully you'll be able to learn a little bit about the core classes of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, I'm not going to be talking about every class. I'm going to have a separate session which I'm going to talk about the more advanced classes, I'll call them. The classes that have been released so far, as of the date I will be putting that out, which I might have supplements in the future to include newer classes when they come out. But for now, let's hit up those core classes. So, we will talk about all of them, and we will talk about some of the basic information that you will need to know about these classes. Something that I will mention first, because there's plenty of people out there that have, if you're coming to seeing this, you've got D&D 5e experience. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're new to this, and I'm going to try to talk about this from the three different directions. From those of us that are coming from Pathfinder 1st Edition, those of us that are coming from D&D 5e, and those of us that know nothing whatsoever. So, to those of you that know nothing whatsoever, hey, welcome. You're going to learn a thing or two about how to play this game a little bit and how the different classes work. These are a major decision for your character. This is the kind of thing about your direction and your character's effectively job in the world. That's a good way of thinking about it. For those of you that are coming from 1st Edition, hi, welcome. You know, there's a lot of things that are going to be very similar to what you know from Pathfinder 1st Edition. All of these classes appear in it. Now, not all of them were part of the core classes of 1st Edition. That's an important thing to mention. But certainly, plenty of them were, all of them were present, which is a good thing. I will tell you, the core classes from before, we've technically added one more. So we're only one more different from the core classes from before, for 1st Edition. For those of you that are joining from D&D 5e, welcome also. Well, for comparing and contrasting here, we have one class which does not appear in the form at all. Hey, the Warlock isn't here. And the Artificer has been broken apart into its separate classes. We have the Alchemist. So it is a little bit connecting with that not core class. But other than that, it is the same number of core classes that appears in D&D 5e. And honestly, one more than what appears in Pathfinder 1st Edition. So there are 12 classes we're going to talk about. So 12, got to with my fingers here. But we should get started kind of discussing, well, the basics. And before I throw us over to the Archives of Nethys and start talking about the things, you have to know that each class in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you are looking up, and actually, why don't we throw me over here, efficiently, and why don't we open up this just to see what it is. We're going to go into the first one here, and we're going to go into Alchemist details. See, like here, this is like one of the things that they kind of give a quote about. This is actually in the book. So if we look at the Alchemist, right here in the front, right at the top, it has that information. Now, there is something that is here. It mentions that during encounters, it does show that down here. Role-playing the Alchemist, it gives some information about role-playing it. Gives, this is going to be the same for all the classes. It gives key ability scores. It gives hit points. Those are two critical things. Gives the initial proficiencies you start with. An advancement table, and then we talk class features. There are certain class features all classes will have. Class feats, skill feats, general feats, skill increases, ability boosts, and ancestry feats. Now, it seems like a lot, but let's break down each of these different things. Let's talk about each of the different things. Of course, playing the class isn't a necessity for you playing the class. It gives kind of a cue to how your class might work. See, it says others, you might, others probably, and things like that. This gives you an idea of how the class plays. You can still deviate from that, but there is a core to the idea of how the class plays that is displayed here in the way that it talks about it. Now, of course, key abilities, hit points, these are mechanical things. Like your key ability, that of course is your most important ability score. It's what a lot of your class abilities are going to matter on. For the Alchemist here, it's intelligence. It gives, some key terms also here. This is something that Archives of Nethys adds in a little bit. It's helpful to know that these are key terms for your class. The initial proficiencies. These are what you start out with. Your skill, spell, weapon, armor proficiencies. Let's go back to the Alchemist and go down to those. Also, your perception, saving throws, skills, attacks, defenses, class DCs. Class DCs is, where your spell DCs, or any kind of DCs that you'd have in for your class attacks. Attacks are your weapons and other types. Defenses is your armors. Skills are the skills you have. Saving throws, of course, and perception, which ends up being your ability to see and your initiative. So you can see that the initial proficiencies are very important to have because it's your starting basis for where you are in everything you have. Of course, all of these have an advancement table, which I will show it off in the book here. Just paging to it, a couple pages forward. There is the advancement table for an Alchemist. It tells you at what levels you gain stuff. This is an important thing for, leveling up. If you are playing in a campaign where, honestly speaking, you do not gain a lot of levels, it doesn't really matter. That's something that's not going to come up a lot. Granted, if you're playing in a campaign where you are going from 1 to 20th level, it's a good idea to know where your class is going to go. What level are you going to choose things? This is something I've talked about previously in various locations. You can plan ahead. You don't need to. You can loosely plan ahead at the very least. You can take a look at when my second level comes up, what do I want to choose? Because sometimes you might want to take a look. It might take time. And you can do it out ahead of time. You can wait until you actually level, because sometimes, like as I said, in a campaign that's very short, you don't know how many times you're going to level or something like that. Your game master could have told you an idea of what level they want to get to. Things can change. In a longer campaign, where you're going to gain a lot of levels, it might be good to at least plan out 5 levels in advance. And when you're getting closer to that end, you might not have to plan out all of them. You could technically plan out all of your 20 levels. I planned out for a campaign where I knew I was going to get to level 17, and I was playing a fighter, every feat I had. Granted, I did change some things as some things changed in the game, but I had a general idea of where to start. And because, when you do your research, you usually come up with, more than your level's worth of a list. Making note of that. When things change, I could go back to the old list and see, what did I cut out from before that I want to replace this with? Then your class features. So, you do have some general abilities as a class. Most of them kind of do. But the main ones that you are getting are the feat selections, the skill increases, and the ability boosts. These are going to be the same for everybody. The other all abilities and things you get from your class are going to be specific to that class. There will be abilities that hey, this is a class ability. They will be listed in your class. And you can take a look at them and be like, oh, I get, things like alchemists get alchemy. I'll go into detail about that kind of thing. But alchemy has a bunch of subheadings to it. But it is a class feature they get. And so that's different than the generalized class feature, They're the only ones that get it. Other than that, you do get class feats. Class feats are a point in time where you get to differentiate your Alchemist, Fighter, Barbarian, whatever, from a different one. You get the selection of feats that you can take at your level. And as you level up, because you get more than one class feat as you go, you get options of higher level ones. You can still take the lower level ones. If none of the higher level ones help you out at all, you can take another lower level one. I could continually take first level feats throughout my campaign. Granted, traditionally, a lot of those higher level feats become more powerful. But again, it also depends on whatever you're building for your character. But it means that higher level you get, the more access to these feats you have. This works the same for all of the feats, to a degree. So the class feats, your class level depends on what you have access to. They are a selection of abilities you can take for your character that are specific to your character. An alchemist's feat is different than a barbarian's feat. They are specific to them, but they are a selection of these feats for that time. Skill feats. Skill feats are ones that you, depending on your training in that skill, depends on if you can take it. If you're just trained a skill, you can basically take all the first level trained skills. But a lot of skill feats require you to have higher levels of skill in it to become an expert, a master, or legendary in order to qualify for them. So you might find yourself taking a lot of low-level skill feats until you get some of those skill increases later on in your class. And your class determines what skills you have. Now you can, using general feats, which we'll talk about in a minute, to get some more skill training, usually, which will give you some more options for skill feats. And we'll talk about this when I dive into skills at a later date, that you get these and they are extra abilities that you get for using a skill. They're bonus abilities that are beyond what the normal base skill gives everyone. So everybody gets a base skill for being trained in it, and I've specialized in that skill and gained an extra ability with a skill feat. General feats. Now, the important thing to say about general feats is many skill feats are also general feats. Not all of them. The same with not all general feats are skill feats. It's sometimes a skill feat and a general feat will overlap. Not always. So consider them separate, though sometimes their lists overlap. That's just the only thing to talk about that there. You can see some overlapping where there will be a feat that's in both lists, but general feats are taken, and they usually give you things like, as I said, one of the main ones that you can get is training in something. That is a general feat. There are other general feats that give you little abilities that any class can take. It effectively is little things that is not tied to a skill and is often tied to various abilities. Things like proficiencies and equipment kind of fall under general feats that you can find. We can go to the general feat list here. There's a general feat, no skill, also. But you can see there's a lot of them that are like here. Adopted ancestry. Gain access to ancestry feat of another ancestry. That's a general feat. That's an option you can take to gain further abilities and further options. But that was just one example of many general feats. And as you level up in your class, you will have access to general feats. Then there's skill increases, where it's at 3rd level, every 2 levels after, everybody gets those. The thing is, class feats are granted at 1st and 2nd level, and then after that, 1st or 2nd level, and after that is dependent on the class. That's the important thing about class feats. They start out 1st, 2nd level, and then after that depends on the class. Skill feats are exact. It's at 2nd level, and every 2 levels after that, every class gains a skill feat. So, at 4th level, 6th level, 8th level. The general feats, 3rd level and every 4 levels. These are another thing that happens for every class. The skill increase, 3rd level, and every 2 levels after that, most classes grant a skill increase. There are examples of some that are different, like the rogue, which gets them more often. These rules stay the same until you get to a class in which it's different. So pay attention to that. You could be under a specific class where any of these rules are changed because of that class. rogues are, one of their main focuses is they use a lot of skills. So yes, they get skills different than another class because it is part of their class features. It is one of their abilities that, yes, maybe I don't get some of the other abilities a barbarian gets, but instead I get more class skill increases. And that increases the level. If you don't have it trained, it becomes trained. If it's trained, it becomes expert. But the thing is that at point in time, you have to at least be third level to get expert in something. So I mean, that's the first time you get it. You can have an expert until you're third level. 7th level to become a master if you're already an expert in it. And 15th if to become legendary if you're already a master in it. So effectively, you have to level up your skills. You start with trained, then they become expert, then they become master, then they become legendary. And there are levels that you can only do that at. So like, I have to be 15th level to get that legendary in anything. So that's your skill increases, which are part of your class. Then your ability boosts. So this is at 5th level and every 5 levels after this, which is both different than Pathfinder 1st Edition and D&D 5e. Both of them was at 4th level, and every 4 levels after that, you gain some kind of ability score boost, as defined by the game. They're different for both of those, but it's a way to increase your base ability scores. The thing that you start your character with that define your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. At these times here, you don't just get +2. If you were talking Pathfinder 1st Edition, you get +1 to one of those scores. If you're talking D&D 5e, you get +2 to one of those scores to a certain degree, and after a score becomes high enough, it becomes +1. That's a 5e thing. In this one, you get +2 to 4 different stats. Yes. At 5th level, 10th level, 15th level, and 20th level, I get to put 8 into my ability scores overall. 8. Now it's separated into groups of 2, and they have to be different. Meaning I could do, if I'm a fighter, maybe I want to do strength, dexterity, constitution, and heck, maybe intelligence, because I'm a little bit more of a smarter one. If I'm a bard where charisma's better, of course I'm going to put it in charisma. Maybe I'll put it in dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. You know, of your 6 ability scores, 4 will go up every time you get this set of ability boosts. Now the thing is, there is a limit to this. If you have an 18 in something, it reduces it to a +1. Meaning that if I've already an 18 charisma, I'm only getting 1 from this ability boost. Still, if that's a primary ability score of my class, it's worth it. It's important to do that. I would highly recommend it. Any chance you have to increase your primary ability score, do it. Any chance. The last thing that you will be getting are ancestry feats. Now, I talked a little bit about ancestry before. It's what you were born as, if you're elf, dwarf, human, whatever. There's a lot more to ancestry, so I'll have to have an ancestry guide, kind of understand that a little bit more. But you have ancestry feats, which are special abilities based on your ancestry. You get ones at 1st level, of course, but you also get ancestry feats as you level up based on your class. Now, most of these are at 4 points in time. 5, 9, 13, 17. Again, this is very similar to the skill that, unless this class says differently, this is the basic rule. So, I don't think there's a class in among this entire list that has done this. It's still just those levels. But it doesn't mean there couldn't be one in the future. And of course, you can see here, I'm sure, that there are, as I said, I'm going to be going over 12 classes today. This is the Archive of Nethys, which I'm showing here on the screen. And there are, well, more than 12. There are 10 more classes here. So that's 22 that are being showed, including 2 uncommon ones. So, that's the basics of a class. This information gives you an idea of when you're looking at a Pathfinder 2nd edition class, what you get from it. We should talk about the ones that are in the core rulebook here. I will talk about this chart here, common and uncommon. What the heck does that mean? Well, common means that if I want to play this in pretty much any Pathfinder 2e game that's using the world of Golarion, I could play any of these. Because anywhere I am in the world should have these classes. They might not be in huge numbers, but they appear. If I'm in Ustalov, which is very, like, I talked about in my, like, world setting things, I could be a psychic, I could be a thaumaturge, I could be a summoner. A fighter makes sense, an alchemist 6. But if I'm in, across the world, you know, on the other side of it, in Tien, in Tianzi, then guess what? I could be a psychic, I could be a summoner, I could be a thaumaturge, I could be a barbarian, I could be an alchemist. It's a very different, very Asian-inspired world, or region. Tianzi, it feels a lot like, it has very big similarities to what Asia would be for us. It's that kind of, like, that's kind of an interesting thing about it. There are places in the world that are very similar to places in our world via Golarion. But, unless specifically said by your GM, which is an important thing to say. Your GM can say no to any common class, no to anything. It depends on their campaign. But generally speaking, if I brought any of these classes that are common to my GM, they'd be like, sure, that's okay. Especially if we're in Golarion. If we're in a custom homebrew world, up to the person doing it. They can change the common, uncommon rules. Uncommon classes are the ones that need, well, approval. Because uncommon classes don't show up everywhere. It could be if you're a gunslinger in Tianzi, you might be the only one there. Granted, the chances of that actually are very little because it's a large country and there's a lot of people there. But you could be something really weird and different that people don't know about. Guns aren't a common thing in Golarion. If you're looking to campaigns, you can make it more common. Skulls and Shackles, the adventure path that I've used for a campaign I've been running, I made guns more common. Just because it fit with the pirate theme of the Skulls and Shackles adventure path, because I felt like it was something that worked with it and fit with it. But you don't need to do that. You can keep it at the very kind of rare levels of normal Golarion, as it is defined in the normal world. Each person has their own world. But just so you know, those are classes that specifically you have to approve it. And there are uncommon things throughout this. So the terms common, uncommon, and even rare will show up. And no, when I talk about things like skill uses, when I talk about ancestries, when I talk about backgrounds, when I talk about spells, when I talk about all these things, even feats sometimes, common, uncommon, and rare do exist. And if you are more than common, you know you have to talk to your GM about using one of those. Because setting-wise and world-wise, they are rarer and something that tends to change the balance of things. That's the thing you have to recognize about a lot of those things. A gunslinger changes the balance of things to a degree. So does an inventor. Not that they are more powerful, but they have abilities that are different enough to alter things. So approval and looking at, does this fit with my campaign? Does this fit with my area of the world is important. But anyway, let's talk about the 12 classes, because I want to talk about these core books. Let's hit what we were talking about, Alchemist here. So, Alchemists. The easiest way to say this is that an alchemist is a researcher who uses bombs as a weapon, supports their allies with potent potions and elixirs, and can even alter their bodies with mutagens, which warp them. They're very knowledgeable. You will always be ready with like a elixir at hand or a bomb to help out, and you can brew up alchemical components during downtime. That's kind of what it says in this area here, and I'm trying to repeat it. Intelligence is your big class score. The hit points, we're not going to worry about that. Additive. It talks about that as a key term you're going to use, and infused. So, again, I'm not going to dive into the key terms of the classes here. This is just a basic guide. But you have to know that these are two terms which may appear on your abilities as an alchemist. And knowing what they mean is important and how they react. Key terms are critical. If you understand the key terms, it helps out a lot, because key terms, if infused appears on one of your abilities, you automatically, if you understand what infused is, know there's these rules about it. That you created an alchemist item with infused trait using your infused reagents. It has a limit time before it becomes inert. Any non-permanent effects from your infused alchemical items, with the exceptions of afflictions, act as slow-acting poisons, and when you make your daily make your daily preparations again. So that sentence, rather than writing that out in everything, you just put the infused keyword. So keywords are very important in Pathfinder sectors. I'm going to reiterate this every time we talk about it, because it's very important. So keep an eye out. Additive, infused, know what they are if you're playing an alchemist. They will come up. It's kind of like it's going to be on the test. Their proficiencies. I'm not going to go through all of these because I have to go through a bunch of classes. But you can see where you're trained, where you're an expert. Those are the different things. Really, for most classes, you will only be an expert in 1 or 2 saves. The rest of things are going to be trained in. As you can see here, that's how it works with an alchemist. They have 2 saves they're expert in. Everything else is trained. This tends to be the base way things work. Now, here, and I almost forgot I wanted to show this. The iconic Alchemist will be appearing on the screen. I'm going to try to do the iconic characters to see them. So that's our little goblin friend who's the iconic Alchemist. Here is the list as things go. So you can see ancestry and background, initial proficiencies, alchemy, formula book, field research, alchemist feat. And you get an alchemist feat at 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th. Every 2 levels after you get an alchemist feat. You get the skill feats at the same time. You get other abilities as you level. So you can see this chart here tells me what I get wherever. Now, of course, all the classes really mention, hey, you get an ancestry and a background. Hey, you get your initial proficiencies. That's something like all the classes mention. So it's like, okay, those things are there. Alchemy, here's one of your big abilities. And as you can see, it has a number of things under it. It has infused reagents, advanced alchemy, quick alchemy, which are all under here. Quick alchemy is a 1-action alchemist manipulate ability. You have to be an alchemist to do it. It creates something. The infused, the advanced alchemy, these are the abilities you get. Notice there are some other things here. If you say, it says, you gain the alchemical crafting feat right here. Hey, my ability here gives me all this and a skill feat. Okay. You can use the craft activity to create alchemical items. When you use this feat, you immediately add the formula for 4 common first level alchemical items. When you select this, you get 4 common alchemical items to your formula book. They got a list of alchemical items over here. I think in the book they mention a page that you can go to for the list of alchemical items. I believe, yes, which in the book, or if you have the PDF or the core book, it's 543. And so, this is all about creating alchemical things. You've got your reagents, which we'll talk about. When you fuse the reagent with your own alchemical essence, you gain the ability to create alchemical items at no cost. Each day during your daily purchases, you gain a number of batches of infused reagents equal to your level plus intelligence modifier. So effectively, there's alchemical items. You have a formula book that you have them in because you can craft them. And what you have is you have reagents, which are, I can create a number of alchemical items per day without using materials. I just can't. And you can use these reagents for advanced alchemy or quick alchemy. And they have a light bulk. That's important for weight matters. So, and these are daily preparations to prepare these. So, sorry, I'm going to take a drink here. Anyway, during your advanced alchemy is effectively, you can use the advanced reagents to create alchemical items that you put together. You don't have to do a crafting check to do this, and you ignore the number of days it normally creates the alchemical item. Advanced alchemy basically is like, I can create a number of alchemical items, that I'm ready for a day. Quick alchemy is you can create a single item of level of your advanced alchemy or lower. That's your formula book. Without having to spend a normal monetary cost, it's an action to do that. So this is all about creating your alchemical items that you use during the course of a day. You have a formula book. Your formula book has a cost to it. You get stuff from the feat, and you get an additional 2 formulas. And each time you gain level, you gain more formulas. So you would have to look at the full alchemical items list, which I can go here. Let me just go over here. Look at this. Look at this nice alchemical item list with levels attached to it. And look at all these things that are here. They're all level 1. But you can see that there's a lot of alchemical items here. And then you get a research field. So, research field. Well, what is a research field? The best way to describe this is, for those of you that are coming in, it's a specialization that your character has. It's something that your character researches differently than everybody else. For those of you coming in from 5e, most classes like this have a specialization. For 5e, it would be whatever archetype you get for, whatever class you are. That's your research field. For Pathfinder 1st Edition, you have an archetype. Also, that was a thing that's... there is a list of research fields, which we can kind of go to here for a second. The examples: bomber, surgeon, mutagenist, toxicologist. Toxicologist is the newer one, but the other 3 are ones that were in the core book. You could have been a bomber, surgeon, and mutagenist. And so you can see, when I become a bomber, I get a field discovery and some other things here. You can see that, you gain these abilities from being a bomber. I gain these abilities from being a surgeon. It is specialized to these things that you have. I would have to look in here to see where they talk about it a little bit better. Yeah. They give examples of, the surgeon in here. Effectively, what this information shows here is just because you get at certain levels this: field discovery, perpetual infusions, perpetual potency, greater field discovery, perpetual perfection. These abilities, all alchemists gain. So that's the thing that, when I go back to Alchemist in a second here, you will see that these are class abilities. What your research field does is, for those class abilities, this is how they work. So that's basically the difference. It's like the field discovery of a bomber is different than the field discovery of a surgeon. So this is another way that you make your class what it is. And honestly, so you can see, field discovery here depends on your research field. Perpetual infusions depends on your research field. Then, of course, we do have the Alchemist feats that you will take, which there's a whole list of here, again, based on level. The higher level you get, the more you have access to. They have common, uncommon ones, different sources of books here for them, and they have abilities. And some of them have prerequisites. Now I can see, like, Professional Infusions, a lot of these, there isn't any particular... This is an important note here about the Alchemist, at very least. The prerequisites, there really aren't any that matches your research field. That could be something that could come with sometimes feats and stuff like that, that you're limited. But I've got my research field, which gives me certain abilities. With that entire list of Alchemist feats, other than level, I have full access to it. Skill feats, general feats, skill increases, ability boosts. We all talked about those. Ancestry feats. You know, powerful alchemy, an ability that increases your ability to do alchemical stuff, honestly. As you level up. See, alchemical items created on the fly are particularly potent. You can change its DC to your class DC at 5th level. So think about that. That's something that is important there. Now, the only thing I could say about that is, in the normal book, a lot of times they mention some of this stuff in separate areas, and you kind of like combine it together. So you would have to kind of see where it is. I believe that one is under your fuse reactions or advanced alchemy. I have to see where it is in this entire thing. I haven't read through the entire section of Alchemist in the book. But all this information is laid out here. It's just in a much... It's two different ways of looking at it. I'm going to tell you that. It's the same information, just two different ways of looking at it. Either or is fine. But as you can see, hey, those key terms I was talking about, talk about them right there. And they give an example surgeon right here. Stuff for you to dig. Hey, look at this. Alchemical weapon expertise. Get expert in a bunch of things. In your simple weapons, unarmed attack, and alchemical bonds. So you can see your proficiencies will go up. Your will becomes expert. Those are kind of things that they mention. You get iron will. Alertness. Your perception becomes expert. These are abilities you get. Double Brood, Juggernaut, all these down as you level up. That is the thing. Evasion, your reflex saves become Master, and Professional Perfection, which is your research field. And hey, look at that. At 19th level, you get Medium Armor Mastery. So you can use Medium, Light, and Unarmed with a Mastery in it. So that's an Alchemist. So we got a general idea about what an Alchemist does. Sort of. That's the thing is, we would have to talk about bombs, which is the alchemical bombs, which might be under... Well, the bomber has them listed, I think, very well. I think it's first level alchemical bombs. Hey, remember this alchemy bombs. It is a type of alchemical infusion. It's a subcategory of alchemical things. Look at this entire list at the top here of alchemical stuff you can have that we can talk about. So you'd have the formula for an acid flask. It's a type of bomb. And as you can see, like here, as level goes up and it becomes better, do more damage and stuff. That's the kind of thing you'll do. You get bombs. So, that's all part of the alchemical formulas. So effectively, I get a bunch of formulas for alchemical abilities that I can, per day, create a bunch of these that I don't need to spend money or time on, and prepare these alchemical items, which as I get stronger level become more powerful, and I can use these alchemical items to give boosts and bonuses to it, kind of like spells, except they're chemical based and I can chuck them. That's an alchemist. Get the idea of it? I hope everybody does. If you have any questions, just let me know. Let's talk Barbarian. Hurrah! So, you know, you get angry and you smash stuff. I mean, if you are familiar with a Barbarian in Pathfinder 1st Edition or D&D 5e, it's a lot the same. It's someone that gets angry, gets a rage, that enhances their abilities. You summon a rage, which gives you strength, that you get more offensive, but you lower your defenses, and you smash things. You might be intimidation in a social encounter, and you're very headlong into danger. But if there's something that needs to be, like, breaking, or, like, something that needs to be, like, you know, challenging physically, you might be the one doing it. Yeah. You have key terms. Flourish, open, rage. These are your key terms you'll be worrying about. Strength is your top ability score. To think, strength for the Barbarian would be your top ability score. We'll look, that was Fumbus over here. We got a Miri here. We can check out a Miri. Everybody likes a Miri. Well, I don't know who does. But, you know, it's, you get the most hit points. You get 12 a level. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. So, again, we have some experts here and trained proficiencies. The main one I want to point out here that's different than the last one is you are an expert in perception. Better at noticing things. Better initiative. The rest of the abilities, skills, attacks, defenses, class DCs, all very standard for most classes. So, we got the ancestry background, initial proficiencies. What's important when we talk about a barbarian here, of course, is your rage. So let me come down here. Right here, rage, top of the thing. We don't have a Miri getting in the way of it. We can see it there. So, rage takes an action to do it. That's an important thing here. As you can see, it takes an action right at the top here. This little thing here screams, I need an action to take. Capping if you begin raging. You get a number of temporary hit points equal to Constitution plus your hit points equal to your level plus con modifier. The frenzy lasts for 1 minute until there are no enemies you can perceive, or until you fall unconscious, whatever comes first. You can't stop voluntarily raging while you're raging. You gain 2 additional damage to melee strikes. Additional damage is halved if your weapon or unarmed strike is agile. Take a -1 penalty to AC. Can't concentrate unless they also have the rage check. Can't seek while it, and you can't rage again for 1 minute. So that's the big thing here is it lasts a minute, and you have a minute downtime before you can use it again, but you can just do it, and it lasts as long as you have enemies, a minute, or you fall unconscious, whichever's first. Okay, now you have an instinct. Hey, here's our class archetype for a barbarian. The instinct you take. There's animal instincts, dragon instincts, fury instincts, giant instincts, spirit instinct, superstitious instinct, which was added in the advanced player's guide. And they give you an anathema, a specialization ability, and a raging resistance. Some of them gave you 8 additional abilities, like bestial rage, instinct ability, draconic rage. Fury doesn't give you anything extra. Giant gives you Titan Mauler. Spirit gives you Spirit Rage, and Superstitious gives you Superstitious Resilience. But, you see, your Instinct, again, grants you abilities. Then you get your Barbarian feats. You get abilities like Deny Access at 3rd level. You aren't flat-footed or hidden undetected. Yeah, so you can see that's kind of like a... for first edition, it would be... not Uncanny Dodge. It's... Was it Uncanny Dodge in first edition Pathfinder? Just trying to remember off the top of my head. Abilities. Again, been a while since I've played a Barbarian. It is Uncanny Dodge. Gives you some Uncanny Dodge. I actually think this is improved Uncanny Dodge. From, if I remembered correctly, from Pathfinder first edition. So, it's definitely giving you more abilities. The ability boost, sensory feats, brutality, juggernaut, weapon specialization. Again, a lot of abilities that give you more up your skills, up your weapon abilities, give you extra bonuses while you rage. You eventually get a Mighty Rage, which replaces your rage effectively, that you gain a lot more bonuses for. And eventually Devastator at 19th level and Armor Fury at 19th level. So, and also like you get this quick rage down here. If you spend a full turn without raging, you can rage again without needing to wait a minute. 17th level, you can just rage every other round. Good for you. So, a barbarian. Hey, but previously, we have our second person. You know, we got our person that's using potions and abilities and creating all these alchemical formulas and maybe actually making some that use money and abilities too, just to earn some extra cash. Now we got the person that, you know, I have weapon, I smash someone. It could be one-handed, it could be two-handed. Amiri here uses a big old sword. I think she uses it two-handed or sometimes one-handed. She's kind of crazy. But it's the entire thing of, like, I get angry, I hit things, I make them dead. I'm channeling the anger and the ability, and it's got some, like, connections with, like, your natural instinct, whether they are kind of, like, more like some kind of, like, monster or something like a dragon's instinct or, like, just something like an animal's instinct. You like to have this, like, almost dominant natural instinct. And they say it's either kind of from a tradition of what you learned or it's something that came naturally to you. You know, maybe, like, you know, you mimicked the instinct of birds and stuff to, like, you know, just naturally. And, you know, is there a bird on here? I don't think there is, actually. There's a shark. You know, you saw a bunch of sharks. You were at the beach size. And it could be from your culture that reveres those animals. And you kind of go into that. You know, like, rawr. I'm surprised there isn't, like, a bird or something, like a hawk. That'd be kind of cool. And then, you know, dragon and all the rest of those there. So. Like, Fury's very basic. You don't have an anathema or instinct ability. Okay, so anathema and instinct are two things you get. But instead you get a barbarian feat. Increases the damage from rage. And you gain some resistances while you're raging. So Fury's very basic. But then, like, you have an anathema for most of these is letting a personal insult against you slide is an anathema to your instinct. Choose whether the character respects or abhors a dragon type. If you respect it, defying such dragon is anathema. If you abhor it, failing to defeat such a dragon comes across as anathema. So basically there's some kind of, like, thing when you choose an instinct that's like a part of your personality. So, like, you know, if you are a shark, flagrantly disrespecting an animal, you choose an anathema of your instinct as is using a weapon while raging. If you're an animal, you're not using a weapon. Interesting thing to say that there. The dragon one, you know, insults. Can't let it slide. Become shark, indeed. So, like, it's very interesting that the instincts, which is like a kind of class ability, also includes a way of thinking for your character. That's like a lot of these things here too, is it tries to give you ideas about how the training you received affects your character. You don't see this at all at Pathfinder 1st edition. If you're coming from 5th edition, when you look at your backgrounds give you ideas about, like, the general, like, ideas of your character, you know, the personality. That's where your background comes from. Here, they're taking everything and combining it. You know, like, here's the general instinct you'd have from your ancestry. Here's some general information you might have from your background. Here's some general information you have from your class. Oh, hey, your class has a sub-ability, like a Barbarian's Instinct. Here's what your instinct gives you something. This is anathema to your beliefs based on your instinct or the way that you act based on this natural instinct you have as a barbarian. And they oftentimes do this for a lot of stuff in Pathfinder 2nd edition, but it combines all these together rather than just be from, like, I'm a, you know, if we're talking 5e, it's the thing it still works, but it's sort of like, oh, I was a folk hero. My personality's based on folk hero. You can customize those, but those are the suggestions you have for it. Yes, so it's like, what is you against from your barbarian abilities? The thing you're against. And you have that because of your instinct. Your instinct grants you these different things. And you get those right away. Yeah. So, let's move on, though, because we still have 10 more classes to talk about. And, you know, as much as I love talking about the smashy barbarians, because it is fun to play a smashy barbarian, but not all the time, let's talk about a bard. A bard. So, use compositions and metamagic are two of your key terms that you will be keeping in mind. And use magical performances. And you can use healing, helpful spells, and attacks. You're going to be trying to use your words, whether they are helping with being, provocative or threatening during social encounters, and you are going to be a knowledge person and kind of have this jack of all trades of spells. The bard is the jack of all trades of the classes. This is an important thing to kind of look at for it. You are charisma based, of course, because it affects your spells, and honestly, your words come first. Their expertise hits up in perception. Only one expertise in saving throws. And then we are the first class to talk about that have spells. They get occult spells. And yes, picture change time. Let me do that. Thank you for reminding me. Lem! And I am using these second edition pictures of everybody, because they have a first edition version of them. And these are kind of like their, they've had some years of adventuring. They've upgraded a little bit. So, hey, we're a class with spellcasting abilities. We're the first one we're talking about. So occult spellcasting is a class ability. Now, I haven't talked about spellcasting for Pathfinder 2nd Edition much, but there are 4 spell lists. This is something that if you've looked at, if you're talking about somebody that has some knowledge, what's going on, D&D 1 has 3. It's something that they've done there. But think of it this way, is they've combined, if you're just doing 5e, if you've done some Pathfinder, or if you just want to know, that rather than each class having an individual spell list, they've combined various different classes into singular spell lists. There are some classes that, depending on your build, have different spell lists to access. I will tell you, the one that we'll talk about for that one is a big one, Sorcerer. If you're playing a Sorcerer, you're going to have to figure out what spell list you're using. It's based on, you're going to take a look, it's based on some choices you make. There's multiple spell lists. But for Bard, just the occult list. And the occult list combines some buff spells, some attack spells, some healing spells. It's a jack of all trades kind of spell list. It's weird, esoteric. It has some unusual spells that don't appear in other spell lists. So it's kind of like that out there one. I talked a little bit about, you get heightened spells. I talked a little bit about that previously. Cantrips. I talked about those in my basic rules thing here. But you can see you've got this class feature list here in your mission progression stuff. And then we go down here to your spell list. Now, you also have a spell repertoire. Spell repertoire because you aren't preparing spells ahead of time. You got slots. And you have a knowledge of spells. Your spell repertoire is the spells you know. It's a collection of spells that are your knowledge. If we're talking about Pathfinder 1st editions, it's your spells known. I think that's actually the same in something like a Sorcerer in 5e. You have a certain number of spells that you know, and then a certain number of slots you can use. It's the exact same kind of way. A wizard in 5e is a little different, that you have your spell book. That can have more options, and you can increase your spell book. Your spell repertoire has some, 5 cantrips, 2 first level spells. And it does say anytime, and it gives rules for when you gain spell slots. Anytime you gain a level, you gain an extra 1. Anytime you gain a new spell level, you gain an extra 2 into a repertoire. And it can be of any level you can cast or lower. Oh no, it's the level that you gain. So at 3rd level, when I get 2nd level spells, I gain 2 spells. You will notice on this chart here, hey, bards gain 10th level spells. They're full caster here. This is something that I think is 5e as full caster, I believe. But Pathfinder 1st edition had them 3/4 caster. Just know that there are 10 levels of spells. I think I've talked about that a little bit. You get all the 10 levels of spells. So when you get your 10th level spell, effectively, see these numbers here? The 3s, the 2s, the 1s. The 10th level, you have your Magnum's Opus that does it. But for all the other from 1 to 9th level, the number here tells you how many spells you will know in your repertoire for that level. So at 20th level, except for 10th level spells, from spells levels 1 to 9, I should know 3 of each of those levels. As you gain levels, you can switch out an old spell. You know, you can also swap out spells by retraining during downtime. Now, granted, when you gain a level, you can only swap out 1. But think about that. Every time I gain a level, I can swap out one of my old spells. So if I take something at 2nd level that outshines something, one of my 1st level spells, I get rid of it, replace it with something else. And I could also, with some downtime, get rid of it. Now, we talked about focus spells a little bit. Bards get focus spells. They get composition spells. You learn counter performance, composition spell against that. That is the one you start with, but there are various builds for Bard, which gives you other options for composition spells. They're your focus spells. You get 1 focus points. You can spend 10 minutes, basically the closest thing to a short rest for 5e players that you get, really, to refocus your points. Otherwise, honestly, there is no use for a short rest. And you don't get those kind of rests, but it's the kind of thing that's like an extra little spell you can get back. You start with 1 focus points, you can get up to 3, still takes you that amount of time to gain them back, full of resting bits. There are composition cantrips, though, too, that you might get. That's another thing that I should mention. There are composition cantrips. These are focus spell cantrips that function like cantrips. They're extra cantrips you don't, and they don't use your focus points. So effectively, remember, we said 5 cantrips that you had as a bard. Guess what? You might have a few extra if you get some composition cantrips. Now, bards get muses. Now, bard is a muse is basically their class feature. It gives you very little for choosing a muse. I will tell you that first. You can see here when I look at these muses, like Enigma. Enigma gives you Bardic Lore feat and True Strike to your spell repertoire. Okay, so give me a feat and a spell. Same with Maestro, gives you a feat and a spell. Polymath gives you a feat and a spell. And Warrior gives you a feat and a spell. That's what your muse gives you. The other important thing about muses is I click on Bard class list, and you can see here Enigma Muse, Maestro Muse, Warrior Muse, Polymath Muse. It gives you extra things. Now I will tell you one thing about Bard, which I will note here, because they do have prerequisites of muses, you can get more muses. Hey look, Multifarious Muse. You can take it at 2nd level. You get an extra muse. That's it. And you can take it multiple times. So, this is one where I could have all 4 muses. I could have all 4 archetypes to my bard. Unlike a barbarian, unlike an alchemist, which is very specialized, bards, as a jack of all trades, could just take everything. And when you get a muse, you get a 1st level feat and a spell to your repertoire. So guess what? If I took that Multifarious Muse 3 times, gained all 4 muses, I still get something. I still get the 1st level feat from each of those muses and the spell. So that's the great thing about taking those extra muses, is you don't lose out on something when taking Multifarious Muse. You still get something from it, which is really cool. And then you qualify for all those feats that the other ones you might want to take. So that's very interesting about bards, too. Bards gain skill feats, etc. You know, bards have signature spells. That's a thing we should talk about at 3rd level. I kind of talked about this during Focus. It's basically, for every spell level you have, 1st level doesn't matter. But from every 2nd level to 10th level, you choose, well, to 9th level at least, you choose a spell that you knew, and it from any spell list, and yeah, basically take a feat, leave a feat, and you get that spell of every level. Like Magic Missile, if I know Magic Missile, I only know it at 1st level. I would have to add to my spell repertoire at Magic Missile 2nd level to have the abilities of 2nd level. And it would only be a 2nd level then, ever. It wouldn't be the 1st level, it would always be the 2nd level, use a 2nd level slot. But if I make it my signature spell, well, it doesn't matter. I can use it at 1st level, 2nd level, 3rd level, 4th level, etc., etc. And you can choose up to honestly 9 signatures. Well, I think it's 8 technically. Yeah. For each spell level you have access to. Choose one spell at that level to be a signature spell. So you can do it up to 9th level, because I think 9th level you can use some in your 10th level slot for it, technically, but that's an entirely different issue. You know, your spell casting becomes expert, etc., 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 and eventually you do get your magnum opus, which is, you get 2 common 10th level occult spells to your repertoire. You get a single 10th level spell slot, and like, yeah, that's about it. You can't use a 10th level spell slot with abilities that give you more of the spell slots to let you cast without expending spell slots. So there are abilities that could do that. You could also use your 10th level spell slot to, say, cast your magic missile if you wanted to. But honestly, you might... You get the signature spell for it. There's, like, you know, from 1 to 9, you have your signature spells. So technically your 9th level spell slot you can boost up, I'm pretty sure, to your 10th level. It's just not great use of it. Probably your 10th level spell you'd want to use it a lot better. But it's the same kind of thing. Oh, you get legendary spell casting right here at 19th level. Your proficiency with your occult spell attacks and DCs becomes legendary. But again, it's the same kind of thing. We're a spellcaster now. We've looked at the first of the of all the spellcasters. Let's move on to another one to look at. Champion. Hey, does everybody remember Paladin? It was in, 5e. It was in Pathfinder 1st edition. If you haven't played anything before, you really don't know about it. Hey, Paladin was replaced by Champion. Champion is the non-alignment base. Now, granted, if you're talking about Pathfinder 1st edition, you were lawful good for Paladin. It's the only thing you could be. 5th edition opened it up to, like, different types of Paladins that have different vows. Basically, at this point in time, they're like, Paladin's a very holy term. It's a very, very good aligned term. Let's just make them champions. You're an emissary of a deity, devoted servant of some kind of divine mantle that you've taken on of something, or some kind of code. So you could be a good one that's, holding up hope and protecting innocence, or you could be like an evil one that, slays bystanders and brings forth destruction and death. They have Flourish, Metamagic, and Oaths. So Flourish has shown up more than once. Metamagic for a key term. Hey, they also get it too. They have Oaths. Now, here's the first time we have a key ability of your choice. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Worm, for reminding the picture. Let's switch off from Lem to Shayla. Good old Shayla. This is the first time we have a key ability score we can choose from. Strength or Dexterity. So that's the thing is, I could be a Dexterity-based champion, I could be a Strength-based champion. The reason why they give you the choice here is there's 2 different builds for weapons. But it also means you really want to specialize in that weapon. Doesn't mean I can't have Strength, I can't have Dexterity, but I would want one to be the better one. Remember, I talked about at 5th level, you get ability scores up to 4 different stats. I could keep raising both of Strength and Dexterity every time. I could. So, they tend to be very hand-to-hand combat. They're very protective. They have abilities that put them into position that they want to be front and center. So, if you're using Dexterity-based fighting, you're probably using kind of finesse-based things rather than, you're still front line. You're just not using, like, big sword. You might be using, like, a rapier or something like that. You're very spiritual, they tend to be. Proficiencies. Hey, you choose a deity, you gain skill determined by choice of your deity. Right here, that's an important thing to note. So you will be choosing a deity here that you follow. And we're talking about the Galarian deities. Again, your custom worlds might have their own things, and there are certain rules for kind of going beyond that. And you get spells, too. So we'll talk about spells. They have the spell chart here for a Paladin. Or a Champion, I'm sorry. They do not. Let me see if they've got a copy of if they've got a chart here for your Champion spells over here. I don't know if they've got a chart here for it because of the nature of it. They do not. Okay. I was just making sure. You get a code. Your champion's code. I click on this here. Tendons caused here. So you get good or evil kind of things for tenets. They give examples. It's basically whatever your alignment is. This is beyond what a deity might have. You've got like a code of conduct, and it's like it tells you to stay within your alignment kind of thing. Most people can flex from their alignment. You know, your alignment is generally how you go. But a champion, and the only thing is, when you're playing a champion, is you're trying to uphold what your code is as a champion, what your ideal set is, and you know, they give the example of the tenets of good and the tenets of evil. But the thing is, there are other ones too. You would have to work effectively with your GM, because like in the original book, it only lists the tenets of good. So it's like you have a code of contact by all champions of an alignment. The example is good, but the thing is, you have to kind of think of like, use the example of the two tenets here of good and evil to get an idea of how these work. And you could have tenets of a different alignment then. A deity and a cause. Champions are servants of a deity. That's the thing is. So you it's like, it's one of those things they say about it. You're a servant, you know, actions fundamentally opposed by your ideals or alignment are anathema to your faith. Causes can be found here. So you get a deity and a cause. See, Paladin, lawful good. Redeemer, neutral good. Liberator, chaotic good. Tyrant, lawful evil. Desecrator, neutral evil. Anti-Paladin, chaotic evil. They don't currently have the... which I'm surprised they don't have yet. They might introduce them later on. The lawful neutral or chaotic neutral. Because I could see them having champions for those too. But again, they've only introduced so much. They introduced all the good ones in the core book, and in the advanced player's guide, they introduced all the evil ones if you were going to play it. And the thing is, the evil ones are all uncommon. You tend not to get as many evil champions. You get them, but not as many. They're more uncommon. For world building reasons. You know. So you can see here, champion, paladin. You get a champion's reaction, a divine smite, and an exalt. And each player gets those three things. A champion's reaction, a divine smite, and an exalt. That you get based on your cause. Choose your deity and cause. A deific weapon. You know. You have your deity's favorite weapon. You have to look up the deity list. Either in the book here, which I think is on page... Oh, where do you give me your page of deity weapons? Hey, the deities are 437 to 440 in the player's handbook. You can look up Pathfinder deities. To be honest, that is a thing you can look up. There's a bunch of them. There really is. There's some really common ones, and there's some really uncommon ones. You'd have to look through 2nd edition to see about uncommon ones, but they do have the list of all the common ones. Destiny is really cool, honestly. And they do have some faiths and philosophies, too. So some groups that are a little different. And they do list the various domains of the different things. So, you know. Serenray, Norgerberg, Nethys, Rasma if you want to go death. You know. You get devotion spells. So we talked about spells. They're focus spells. That's what you get as a paladin. You get your devotion spells. You get your advanced spell called a devotion spell. They are focus type spells. You fill your focus pool when you rest, or spending 10 minutes. Let's see, where's the list of devotion spells? I would have to look those up specifically under champion stuff. You get shield block. You get it at first level too. It's another thing you can do. You get shield abilities. Where do you talk about devotion spells? What page is devotion spells on? Thank you very much. Tell me now. 300? You get the devotion spell depending on your cause. Yep, okay, so it's your cause tells you your devotion spell. Thank you. That's why you have the book here, too. Just so you can reference the two things. Because, again, they lay things out here a little differently. So, depending on what cause you take, remember talking about the cause up here, you get a devotion spell. And you can use it. When we're looking over here, let's see here. Lay on Hands devotion spell is a paladin one. So, Lay on Hands. Redeemer also gets Lay on Hands. Liberator also gets Lay on Hands. And Tyrant gets Touch of Corruption. And I'm sure depending on your things, you could get more devotion spells if you took feats and stuff, depending on your build. But you get the one at least. Divine Ally. Devotion attacks a spirit of deity's alignment. Choose an ally, can't be changed. You get a blade, shield, or a steed. Steeds, you get an animal that's kind of like a mount. Spirit in your shield increases your shield's abilities. Blade ally, you power your blade. You can choose whether you get sword, shield, or you get a horse. And after that, it just, your abilities level as you go. And here's Defiant Spell, which is a focus spell at 19th level that you get as a champion at up here. Yep. So you get more devotion spells as you go and level. But that's a champion. You serve a divine source. You have a code of conduct depending on your alignment. You have a cause. You have some tenets that you follow. You're very strict that you don't want to break those. As long as you're bending within the rules of your tenets and your cause, you can still do that. But you have to act within the alignment you've kind of set for yourself. So champions do have some restrictions. It's just that you choose the type of restriction you have. They're an interesting character, as you do have this ability to, be a frontline warrior, protect your abilities, and use your faith to basically protect your allies. So, Paladin, again, example of one. Cleric! Let's talk Cleric. We're a third of the way done here. Cleric are just like champions in a way. They serve divinity. They get meta magic as a key term. Wisdom's important because casting your spells is wisdom based. They are faithful people. As much as a champion, champions effectively causes and tenets. So you think like a champion more is a champion of an ideal. That they have this kind of like a list of things that they follow, but they do it like in a very martial way. The one that kind of dives into the idealisms of divine and what it means and for worship and stuff is a cleric. So they are kind of both similar in a way, but cleric isn't as restricted in a way. Because there are folks that, and I will change the picture here, I just remembered to good old Kira. Kira here, she follows a religion. But the thing about her versus a champion is, the champion is much more restricted in the kind of choices they make. Their following, their decisions are much more way down on them in what they do, because they are much more, honestly, zealous than an actual cleric. The cleric connects deeper with a deity, but the cleric also asks more questions and doesn't have the same, honestly, to a degree, devotion a champion would have. So it's a very interesting kind of juxtaposition. The champion kind of believes and is a lot more filled with faith. The cleric knows more, but also still follows that same kind of level, but isn't restricted in the same way because they you know more, kind of like, so you more questions arrive and kind of exist. So you can be you're a war priest is basically, so you spend spells and weapons. You're not the frontline fighter, but you might use your deity's favored weapon. That's a war priest is one type, and there's also cloistered cleric, which focuses more on the spells. We'll talk about that in a second here. There are proficiencies. Now, divine spells. We had occult spells before. We have divine spells at this point in time. Similar to a bard, list up to 10th level. You get a deity. Just like a champion, you get a deity. Much more open-ended, though, at this point in time. Like right now, if I were to I couldn't really choose Pharasma for a champion. There isn't really a build for a neutral champion. Doesn't mean there couldn't be a champion of Pharasma, but there isn't something built mechanically in the game right now that I could use for that. I could be Pharasma right away here. Deities give spells to your spell list in this one, and then otherwise you have the divine spell list. You have an anathema. Basically, acts that oppose your deity's alignment, or ideas that are anathema to your faith. So, like, while as a champion, you don't really want to stray too far from, if you're like a paladin, lawful good. You'd have some troubles even if you're aiming a little bit more neutral. In this case, as long as you're not like outright, if you're lawful good, as long as you're not outright evil and don't go about against your teachings, you're not really transgressing the same way. The example they give here is creating an undead is anathema to Pharasma. She's really anti-undead. The goddess of death, who's neutral, who believes in all souls should end up where they belong, really doesn't like undead. Kind of makes sense when you're like the arbiter of the afterlife. Hey, all these spirits and souls, they go where they deserve. I have to send them to the right place. Someone's messing with my plans by resurrecting dead in a really strange way. Like, if you get resurrected, you're back to life. You're still alive. Undead, your spirit's just been put in a rotting body. You're cheating death in a way. You're still dead. So yeah, anathema to her. So don't perform stuff that's anathema to your deity. You get divine casting. Heightened spells, cantrips, just like bards, but you get the divine spell list. So different spell lists that you can choose from. So, the number of spells you prepare each day increases as you level up, shown on the chart. You choose from the divine list, or any other divine spells you have access to based on your deity. And they're prepared until you prepare again. And the number of spells you prepare are called your spell slots. So effectively, you prepare 2 first level spells, like going to first level, and 5 cantrips. You do have a divine font. We'll talk about that. Your miraculous spells, 10th level spells. We'll talk about that. But you think of it, we're closer to, at this point in time, this is very first edition Pathfinder. This isn't like D&D. Like, you have a limited number of spell slots, and what you prepare into the spell slots are what you get. Like, I got 2 spells, I choose them, I prepare onto them. Now, we do have a divine font. So we'll talk about that, because this is the exception to this entire thing here. Your divine font, which we do have, is through your deity's blessings, you can channel life force or negative energy, positive energy or negative energy, heal or harm. you know, the thing is, you choose. You know, your deity will tell you, usually, which one it would provide. Or sometimes it would both. Like, I'm pretty sure Pharasma is a deity that, because it's a very neutral deity, I think you can do both. Let me just check that to make sure. Pharasma is just heal, okay. But Nethys, the neutral god of magic, is heal or harm. But Pharasma is just heal. Gotcha. Even Lamashtu, an evil deity, a chaotic evil deity, has heal or harm. So it's good to check what your deity has to see what fits under them. Some of them just heal, some of them harm, some of them do both for various reasons. I close my book here. And the thing is, you choose your divine font, and then, in addition to the slots you gain each day at your highest level of, you gain additional spell slots each day at your highest level of cleric spell slots. You can only prepare heal in these slots, or harm in those slots, and the number of slots is equal to 1 plus your charisma modifier. So, remember when we said wisdom was your most important. Charisma is important too. Your key ability is wisdom because of all your spells, your DCs, based on your wisdom. Here we see charisma is important too. Because charisma gives you, whatever level you are, heal and harm spells. 1 plus your charisma modifier. If I have a charisma of 14, that means if I am, let's say, 10th level, where I would have 5th level spells, I get 3 5th level heal spells that I just know per day. Just know. And the heal spell is really good, because the heal spell is versatile. I will show it here, right here. Let me open it up, because it pops up there. Look at this! It's a versatile spell. I can either use 1, 2, or 3 actions. Well, why is it like that? Well, 1 action has a range of touch. I touch someone, heal them hit points. 2, I have a range of 30 feet. Oh, I can be close to them. 3, it's burst. I can affect a group of allies. Or undead. 30-foot emanation for myself. Think about that. Now, granted, the ranged one also has the bonus of increasing the hit points by 8. So, like this one, I heal 1d8 for just a range of touch for 1 action. A quick heal. Boom. This one here, 1d8 plus 8 for 2 actions. Or for 3, positive burst for just a d8 to everybody. Not a lot first level, but 5th level spell, 5d8 to everybody. Heal is pretty powerful. And getting up your charisma means you get a bunch of different ones. Doctor. Let's click on Doctor. Here's the 2. Cloister Cleric and War Priest. Boom. These are the archetypes of the type of cleric you will be when you choose your cleric. So we're already choosing a deity. Okay. Our deity kind of defines a lot. We've got our like favorite weapon. We've got whether we're healing or harming already. You know, that kind of makes decisions. Now, are we going to be more spellcasting or martial? You still get the spells. But if I'm Cloister Cleric, at these various levels, I gain abilities that make my spellcasting better. Here, I gain some martial weapons. Look, that 3rd level, trained in martial weapons. You still get some bonuses to your spells, but you also gain martial abilities as you level up as War Priest. You focused on more spells and battles rather than just spells. So Doctor's a big choice you can take. Changes the things, the way you work very heavily. And then combine that with Cleric feats, which sometimes you have Worshippers. Depending on if you get harmful healing, good alignment. But you can see here, doesn't matter if you're a War Priest or not, or if you're a Cloister Cleric. Doesn't matter. Yeah, and as we were saying, your deity, 437, I'm remembering the number now, gives you some spells too, so that's an important thing. It gives Cleric spells at different levels. that are listed here. Like, let's say Pharasma. First level Cleric spell, Mind Link. Third level Ghost Weapon. Fourth level Phantasmal Killer. I got those 3 spells from worshipping Pharasma. Yep. So, that is Cleric. And of course, then we go through the rest of the abilities. To Miraculous Spell, which is your 10th level spell. Notice that there's something that is not really mentioned here in the same way. Domains. We didn't talk about those at all. Because you might not have one. I will show you here. First level Cleric ability. I didn't really see it very well there. Let's click on Cleric feats and show you. That domain's something that pops up in 5th edition, normal edition, which is like a area of expertise of your deity. Domain initiate is a feat for it. You have to take a feat to gain this. You don't automatically gain this. Now, each time you take it, you get a different domain. I believe, good old Cloister Cleric automatically gets domain initiate. So, if you're a Cloister Cleric, you get domain initiate. You do get a domain. And it's a particular interest to your deity's relations from your deity's list. So again, we'd have to check our deity's list back on 437, which I keep referencing. I should really keep this page open. But, like, you know, each deity lists, like, 4 domains about. And you can take this multiple times to get multiple domains. But it gains you stuff for that. So domains come up too. They're just, either you get them as a Cloister Cleric, or optional, if you want to be a War Priest. Choose a thing. That's another thing to talk about. That's become something that's like an optional thing to like dive deeper into your deity's abilities, or not. You've got choices. So we've got our divine warrior kind of defined here, kind of shown off here. Our cleric. Let's hit the halfway point and introduce ourselves to the druid. Nature. That's the easiest way to say it. Druids are nature incarnate, in a way. That's not really defining them perfectly, but it hits up a lot of what the essence of a druid is. It's similar in a way to a cleric, but rather extolling a certain deity, they extol nature itself. They use the forces of nature to battle, help their allies. They could be healing, they could summoning deadly creatures, they could summon elemental creatures. They're very balanced in the way they approach problems, and their natural skills can help out a lot. They are also wisdom-based. For those of you coming from other editions, from first edition, fifth edition D&D, first edition, you're familiar with this. But for those of you coming in here that are new, this is a person that just understands the natural world and masters it and uses magics based upon the natural world. We have our first primal spellcaster. They use the primal spell list. You have a druidic order, and thank you, picture. I will show off Linny with her big old kitty. Linny. I like the cat. She's got like a snow leopard. You have primal spellcasting. Again, it works just the same as we've talked about the cleric, we've talked about the bard. Same way, first 10th level spells. This one works more like the cleric. That you have the primal spell list. You have a number of slots that you can memorize spells into per day. As you go up, you memorize more. You are, again, a person that can change your spells out each day from the full list. Unlike, the bard, which has a small repertoire that they have limited slots they can use up to. So bard, I might know 2 spells and have 2 slots. I could use spell 1 twice, spell 2 twice, or both of them each once. This one is whatever I put in that slot, it's what I'm casting. But I have these spell slots prepared and open up. Druids have their own anathema. They're very natural order. There's ones that are basically, you have an order, which we'll talk about in a minute, that has its own specific anathemas. All of them don't use metal armor or shields, don't despoil natural places, and never teach druidic language to non-druids. These are their rules. That means you'd have to atone because you'd lose your abilities. That's the important thing. If you perform enough acts that are anathema to your nature, you lose your magical abilities that come from the druid class, including your spellcasting and benefits of your order. You'd have to atone from it. So that's why druids don't teach the druid language. You lose your magic spellcasting. You know, you've gone against your natural magic that, you know, improves you and comes from your order, because all of them have an order. Do get the druidic language then. Hey, you get Shieldbach and Wild Empathy. So, you get a druid order. It gives you a class feat, an order spell, and some skills you're trained with. You can study with other orders. So that's an important thing. You will have options of doing stuff. You have order spells, which are focus spells. We've talked about focus spells before. And your focus spells are, of course, rounded up, and much like cantrips. Animal, Flame, Leaf, Stone, Storm, Wave, Wild, all those are here. We look at the Druid Animal Order. You can see your train in athletics. You gain the Animal Companion Druid feat. Heal Animal Order spell, which, again, that's a focus spell. So you get order spells from the Wildfire Order spell. Goodberry Order spell, Crushing Ground. They're all focus spells level 1. So you get a feat, a skill, and a order spell. And this one, it says, committing wanton acts of cruelty or killing animals unnecessarily is an anathema to your order. Doesn't prevent you from defending yourself against animals or killing them clearly for food. So it's like, if you get attacked by an animal, you can kill it. If you are trying to get food from it, you can kill it. But you just don't go out of your way to fight animals, and you don't do anything terrible to animals. That would be your druid order. That's actually a pretty simple kind of anathema there, other than the rest of the stuff up here. So you can see. After that, it's basically the same as all the classes we've talked about up here, including the 10th level spell down here, getting to be a legendary spellcaster. Druids are relatively simple. You know? And your feats will make a big difference on what you get. You also get, similar to Bard, you get Order Explorer, which you learn the secrets of another druid order. Which you can take multiple times, like before. You gain the first level feat that lists as a order as a prerequisite, and you're a member of the order for purpose of needing feats prerequisite. You also can commit a fax anathema to that. You don't gain any of the other benefits of the order. So this mentions here specifically, you don't get the training and the skill. You do not gain the spell, the feat. So it's important to check out when you have these. Bard one, well, you only get the feat anyway. So like when we're talking Bard, and we were over at the Bard for the multifarious moves, which we'll go back to over here for a second. You gain the first level feat, muse, and that muse type. And if you remember, you know, muses, they didn't really give you a lot. We looked at those. They gave you a feat and a spell to your spell repertoire. I do not think you get the spell to your spell repertoire for the multifarious muse. So it does have that limiting ability on that one. So you still are limited on your abilities there. So, Druid, I think that's about it. So, like, if I would describe a Druid, natural warrior, maybe you summon an animal to your side, I will tell you, there is, it's not tied directly to your abilities. Wild Shaping, I believe, exists as part of the Druid feats. Let me just check. Yes! Wild Shape is a first level Druid spell that's from the Wild Order. So, you don't necessarily gain Wild Shape. You don't necessarily gain a animal companion. You can have one or the other, or one of the other orders, and gain an ability from that. But if you wanted to have both a wild shape and an animal companion, you could. You could take the Order Explorer and get the other one, too. And the thing is, you get that for free. So. That's Druid for you. So it does make it that not all Druids shape change. Not all Druids have animal pets. It's an interesting thing to kind of see. That's different than Druids were in previous editions, a lot of other places where you had both. You specifically can choose others. Like the Stormborn Druid feat. You gain stuff, which is different. You specialize differently. Like, if you specialize in stone, it doesn't make sense you're transforming into an animal. If you specialize in fire, it doesn't make sense you're transforming an animal. If you specialize in, like, having animal companions, that makes sense. Like, the wild one, it makes sense you change your shape into, like, an animal. And that's why, like, the Druidic orders, it's a very interesting juxtaposition in comparison to some of the other ones, is that you have the choices of what kind of direction you take as a Druid, and there's a lot more choices to that direction. That Druids are a lot more variety. You don't specialize just in that one thing. You can still learn those things and be that kind of Druid if that's what you thought was cool. If you're playing those old editions, the ones that would shape change into creatures, or the ones that would have an animal friend, you can still do those things. You can still do both of those things. You just have other options too. Other very interesting options. Because, like, your order gives you a feat. You could very easily, by second level, be taking the other feat and being like, well, I have wild shape, and I also have, now animal companion. And I got both of them. I'm the traditional Druid of past. We're about halfway done. We're doing good. Let's talk fighter. Oh, fighter. Let's change your pictures to Valeros, everybody's favorite boy. I don't know if he's everybody's favorite boy. He's the one that, he pops up in a lot of things. Valeros is sort of like I would call him the main man, but he's like, he's your first boy coming through. Because he's a dude. He's a dude with a sword and a shield, and calls it a day. You got flourish, you got open, you got press, you got stance. As your keywords. Strength or dexterity. Shiny weapon, go into pointy, squishy area of an enemy. Sometimes bow goes into squishy area of enemy. There are very heavy similarities between a barbarian and a fighter. The barbarian, though, specializes in getting angry and rage and having a lot of, like, natural abilities that enhance their bodies. The fighter is more, I got sword and board and maybe some heavy armor. They're tanking a lot of weight, so they fill a role that's very similar, even to the champion. The champion might be an armor, sword, and shield, but the champion has divine abilities, while the fighter just learns techniques with their sword, techniques with their shield, techniques with their armor. And an important thing we'll talk about in a second is they get some important things here. And as you can see here, expert in simple weapons, expert in martial weapons, trained in advanced weapons, expert in unarmed. They are the class that starts with expert in their attack abilities. That's an advantage for a fighter. That is +2 more than a barbarian. +2 more than a champion, who's only trained in those things. They have other abilities to supplement them, but the fighter has training. Now again, like, if you're a dex or strength based one, I'd assume the thing is you could choose acrobatics as your trained skill and be a dex based fighter. You could choose athletics and be choose athletics, acrobatics, and be a strength based fighter, or dexterity based fighter and pick athletics. You could take the opposite. You don't have to take both of them. Granted, you get more bonuses from both, and actually the additional skills, you can always take the other one too. You get attack of opportunity. You are the only class at first level that gets this. Other classes, through class feats, can gain attack of opportunity. But Fighter gets it as a class ability. Not everyone can make an attack of opportunity. Not every monster can make an attack of opportunity. It's important to remember that a creature within reach uses a manipulate action or a move action, makes the range attack, or leaves a square during a move action, triggers an attack of opportunity. That's a list. Leaves a square during a move action it's using. So the move action itself can provoke it, but if whatever action that is a move action has the move trait, hit him with a strike. Get shield block, get bravery, get a lot of the things here. One of the things here that I will tell you that a fighter doesn't get, and this is kind of an interesting thing about a fighter, is they're a little bit more generic than the other classes in a way. You kind of notice here there's a fighter class list of feats, of course, and you gain all these abilities here, but there's no class choices. No direct class choices. Huh. Yes, this is true. A fighter isn't having any kind of specific build A or build B or anything like that. Now, they get a lot of fighter feats. They do. Every even numbered level, they get a fighter feat. And there's a lot of them in here. It does mean, let's see here. Sample fighters. They do give a sample fighter, but there really isn't a build per se, the same way that there is in other ones. Because most of them, by second level, you're choosing important things. Like, you're choosing your Druid order, or you're choosing your Muse, or you're choosing your, like, your instinct as a Barbarian. You just kind of gain bonuses, combat flexibility, special abilities that level you up, all the way through to your versatile legend at 19th level, and your mastery of armor. And then they just gain a lot of feats. As classes go, they get it every other level. They get a feat. Starting at first level, and then every even level after. So think about that. They get 21 fighter feats that they take throughout the entire thing. And there's a lot of choices to your fighter feats. Yep. There's just the list there that goes on. So, currently, there isn't direct builds for something like a what is it called? The Eldritch Knight. There really isn't Eldritch Knight in 2nd edition as of right now. Not the same way that there is in other editions. Certainly doesn't mean you couldn't build something that would be equivalent to that. But the exact build isn't the same. Because something like an Eldritch Knight could fall under, honestly, like a Magus. Or, it's filled up, differently. You could certainly take a spellcasting dedication, which is, we're not even going to talk about multi-classy shenanigans right now. I am not going to dive into what that means for like the way that multi-classing works in Pathfinder 2e and a lot of those variety things. That's after talking about all the other classes kind of thing. So there are ways you can take some of these builds that don't exist anymore, but they don't exist the same way anymore. all those other fighter builds, all those other ones that are pretty simple, that are not getting large, different abilities, you can kind of build them. But fighters have just variety of abilities. And a lot of different feats, and a lot of different abilities because of that. They take a whole buttload of fighter feats, get their little abilities. They are pretty fairly generic in a way, but also that can find interesting specialties and interesting abilities. It's still fun to fight sword and board dude, and you get a lot of really cool abilities and techniques, stances and things like that, that, you know, allows you to do all these different things, you know, that you might not be able to do as any other class. Their maneuvers, a lot of times, specialized for combat. And you have a lot of choices of these maneuvers. And that's your advantage. You're not looking to a lot of the other stuff. And there's like a fighter kit for a class ability that gives you some items. But like, all these things here as you're taking them: point blank shot, power attack, reactive shield, assisting shot, combat grip, lunge. Each of these that you take gives you more abilities, that gives you, it enhances your fighter's abilities and makes them more unique, rather than having a big choice for your character. So there isn't that big, like, oh, I'm this druid order, I'm serving this deity. That doesn't exist. But you do get plenty of stuff. Alright, let's talk monk. Monk. We'll switch our picture over here from Valros to Sajin. So, monks. Unarmed combatants. These are the people that are going to, like, use their fists or maybe weapons. They're martial artists. That's the thing you have to think about. It's like, a fighter is a person that's trained in a weapon or trained in combat, but they don't have an exact style or formula to do that. They have a bunch of separate techniques that they combine together to their basic style. A martial artist has a specific style that is built in the way that it's going to be built. If I master karate, it's different than mastering taijutsu. You know, a lot of those different... I'm not thinking of a lot of... judo. There's a lot of different martial arts. And the thing is, so they are a group that's flourish, incapacitate, key spells, and stances. And they will use their abilities. They're another dex strength one. They're very acrobatic. They have a flurry rapid of attacks, whether bare fists or specialized weapons. They're very perceptive, philosophical. That's the kind of way you kind of think about for you're an expert all saves. Untrained in all armor, but expert in unarmored defense. So unarmored defense is pretty good to have. You're an expert at it, and you just get 4 skills, no specific spells. So, you have Flurry of Blows as a monk ability. For 1 attack, you make 2 unarmed strike. If both hit, combine their damage for the purpose of resistance and weakness. Apply multiple penalties to strikes as normal. If it has a Flourish trait, you can use Flurry of Blows only once per turn. So Flourish, you can only use once a turn. If it has a Flourish trait. And effectively, it means that in a turn, you can make 4 attacks. Right away. That's the first thing a monk gives you. I can make 4 attacks in a turn. I can use my Flourish, and then 2 normal attacks. Right away. You get monk abilities. You get Powerful Fists, where you increase your fist damage as you level up. This is another group that doesn't have a specific build to it. Not a specific order. What you would do, once again, is take monk class feats to do it. Now, the thing is, you're like, well, what about this thing it talked about? It talked about something up here. It talked about key attacks, key spells. Well, they're focus spells. They're focus spells that you can take a bunch of feats to take. That's among unarmed attacks that it mentions. That if you take it, guess what? You get the key spell. Yeah. There are a lot of monk feats. I'd have to find one specifically. Oh, key spells. It's an actual thing. There's Key Blast. I think key spells might be Key Strike, Key Rush. Yeah. So, yes. I'm gonna take a drink of water here. So like Clinging Shadow Initiate, key spell that mentions. Yeah, you have to kind of check these to see what gains you key spells. Crane Stance, Dragon Stance. You got some stances. Got a Key Rush. You gain the Key Rush key spell and a focus pool of 1. Key Strike. You gain the Key Strike key spell and a focus pool of 1. So see, hey look, we gain key spells from taking feats. And there are some ones which fit like, Elemental Fist. Flurry of Maneuvers, Flying Kick, Holdness of Body, Align, Blaze Talon Surge. So like, rather than just one build for a monk that gives a lot of things, they broke that down because the styles of monk, if you're talking like the various archetypes from first edition Pathfinder, or the various archetype monastic traditions that you get from D&D 5e, they break it down just into the monk feats. So there's another one that you don't have a specific build to it. You don't have a specific choice to it, because as a martial artist, you have a specific style that you're developing your martial arts style through your training. And it is unique to you, your school. Or maybe what your choices are unique to the school of thought you come from. That you're just saying, these combined abilities are that school of thought. And you gain, other abilities to increase your fighting abilities as you go. Your proficiency in damage and stuff goes up. And you have a path for perfection. Your proficiency rank on choose and save goes to legendary right here. That's Graceful Legend. Stuff like that. You purge your incompetence of techniques. Your first strike on a turn, roll lower than a 10, you can treat it as a 10. There's a fortune effect. Level 19. Hey, my first attack on a turn, it was lower than a 10. Hey, it's a 10 now. Level 19 ability. Monk. So again, a monk is like, you're probably, unarmed is the traditional one, but there are weapons that you could use with, specific weapons that can kind of be used with monk abilities. They specifically say, I think we'd have to look it up for weapons. Equipment. We'll go to weapons here. We'll open a new page. But, dagger. I think there are. Is monk still an ability? Or they got rid of that? I would have to look up the keywords for weapons. Range, reload, bulk, hands, group, weapon, traits. Trait sessions. Good, thank you. And then we'll go to equipment traits. No. Weapon traits? There we go. There's a monk trait. Oh, cool. Abilities to trait are from the monk class. It's under weapons, too. I would have to find it, like, in here. Like, maybe like a comma or something. Road remaining all of them. Go by... Oh, is it dispending? There's a comma in here. Kukri. Comma's monk. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a monk read, a monk weapon, uncommon stuff. So not diving into it too much right now. I'm getting distracted by like looking up some stuff and trying to describe it. But, you know, you're using multiple attacks, using quick hits. You're oftentimes using unarmed strikes that are very powerful, like a normal weapons. You're using mystical abilities that are very inward abilities, so key abilities to empower your fists or body in various ways. Specialized stances to give you bonuses. So you're very self-physical. While a fighter's using a lot of equipment and his weapons and shields and stuff, you're using your body and maybe a couple pieces of equipment, but you're mainly focusing in on yourself when you are a monk. There we go. That's the way to describe it. Ranger. Let's get Harask over here. Bye, Sanjin. Harask. Harask. Dwarven Ranger. So, our good friends, the Rangers here, they have, you know, warded spells. Flourish, Open, Press. We'll talk about their worded spells a little bit here. They use Strength or Dexterity, very similar to many of these other classes that can engage in melee or ranged. They have some similarities to a Druid. But they are much more or less than... They are natural world, but they're all about hunting a particular foe, defeating them. And you could use melee weapons, bow... and you support your allies with your skills. And you have this kind of like wilderness experience. Expert in Perception, trained in a couple of skills, Nature and Survival, and 4+. So you get Hunt Prey. You choose a single creature as your prey and focus your attack against that creature. You get bonus to Perceptions to seek your prey, and a bonus to Survival and Tracks to track them. You only have one play at a time and hunt it down. So you get this ability to track one target. That's a big thing here. You get a Hunter's Edge, depending on your training. So this is a class that has, hey, a specific ability. Flurry, Outwit, Precision. There's only 3 Hunter's Edges, all of them from the core rulebooks. Nothing new has been added in. So, Flurry, your multiple attack penalty against your hunted prey is -3, -2 with an agile weapon. On your second attack, and -5 and 6, -4 on your subsequent, and instead of -10. -4 with an agile weapon. Oh, yeah, -3/2 instead of the -5, and -6, -4 instead of the -10. Your hunted prey, take an action to hunt that prey. It becomes a lot easier to hit that prey with multiple attacks. And you've got a Master Hunter upgrade later on. Outwit, you get bonuses to a bunch of skills and recall knowledge, and +1 circumstance bonus to AC against the prey's attack. So this one, you're good at attacking it. This one, you get a bunch of skill bonuses about a prey. But you get a bunch of... These are just, in general, Deception, Intimidation, Stealth, and bonuses to recall knowledge about the prey, and a bonus to AC against it. That's pretty good. And then weak points, you can Precision damage. So first time you hit a round, you do extra Precision damage. And that goes up as you level up. So extra damage to the target. That's 3 different ways of thinking about it. So I get a lot of attacks that will hopefully hit. I get some defenses against them and use some bonuses to skills. Or I get extra damage. All against whoever you're hunting. So the Hunter's Edge gives you an interesting bonus. It doesn't really give you a whole lot. You know, you don't really gain a lot of... you get Warded Spells. Where's Warded Spells? We can talk about those. Your Ranger feats. I think you have to take something for Warden Spells, I believe. All the other notes just normal kind of stuff that you usually get. But you do have some options in amongst your Ranger class feats. So, see here, Animal Companion. It says Druid, Animal Order. So you have to be an animal order druid in order for this to be for prerequisite if you're a druid. If you're a ranger, just have an animal companion. You get focus spells. So this is a way that, like, those low-level spellcasting classes, champion, ranger, and similarly, they get focus spells instead of half casting list or 3/4 casting list. Same can be said here. I can get warden spells and focus points. I can take gravity weapon and, use the gravity weapon focus spell, warden spell in this case, because it's a ranger type focus spell. Heal companion is a warden spell. So you can see there is interesting bonuses, and there's things that if you have an animal companion, you get bonuses. Monster Hunter. If you took Monster Hunter, you can take this Monster Warden. So there are builds within Ranger. Hunter's Edge gives you a little bit here, but honestly, Hunter's Edge doesn't give you a super huge amount. It gives you a little bit. After that, it's all about what you want to do, honestly, at that point in time. Anyway, there are, just a note here, because Harass Gear has 2 weapons, there are 2-weapon builds. There is actual rules and stuff for 2-weapon fighting. We're not worrying about that. That's a specific Harass thing or fighter thing right now. Not going to really worry about that. That's a thing for later. But, sorry. Ugh. Ranger. I'm using some kind of weapon. I'm choosing a prey. I'm hunting that prey. That's the thing that's unique here is that you don't have a favorite enemy necessarily like you did in 1st edition Pathfinder or D&D 5e. Is you specifically instead have a prey you hunt. A specific prey you point out, kind of there. That's the thing is, like, they're taking some of the things that made the hybrid class from 1st edition Pathfinder, the Slayer, a little better. So I don't know if they'll do a Slayer, or they've just combined the abilities of Slayer into the Ranger to improve the Ranger and make it more interesting. That's a question for future class buildings, because we've seen certain of those hybrid classes become their own thing now. AKA, I don't know, the Swashbuckler already. Can we point out one of them that's really easy there? That's one that's very noticeable in some of the classes that have popped up. Don't know if they're going to do more of things like that. But the Ranger, again, you're hunting down things. You're either focusing strength or dexterity. You're doing some damage. Let's talk about Rogue. And let's introduce everybody to Kira's wife, Mauricia. Canon. She's married to Kira. Because, hey, Pathfinder's good at natural inclusion of things, because it's a world that doesn't have prejudices the same way ours does. Yay! Rogue. Dexterity, normal. But there's an option from your Rogue's Racket. We'll talk about that. You can get Debilitation and Flourish. They're about stealth, precision, catching their foes unaware. They're better against big, tough enemies rather than, a lot of little enemies. They're masters of a lot of social tools in various social situations or exploring. Experts in perception. Trained in a bunch of different things. So, you get a Rogue Racket. So this is kind of like how you prove your initial style. That's the first thing that we kind of look at. Here we have, of course, Eldritch Trickster, Mastermind, Ruffian, Scoundrel, Thief. Eldritch Trickster was introduced in Advanced Player's Guide. Tells us that they could do a full fighter version of this, the God, Eldritch Knight. They could still do that, or anything similar to that. But the Eldritch Trickster, it gives you some dabbling into spells. It gives you rules for that, and what you get for that. Other than that, it does tell you that, like, if you're a ruffian, you can choose strength as your key ability score. Scoundrel, you can choose charisma as your key ability score. That's the thing about rogues, is they're a little bit more versatile. Bards are versatile in a... You have to think about a bard as a multi-purpose tool. A bard is sort of like a, what do I need to pull out? A rogue, on the other hand, it becomes more specific. Or specific as you go on. But that specificity happens that you have a chance to develop how you want earlier on. It's a different kind of tool. The rogue might be a... while a bard is a bard would be more of a multi-tool. A rogue is a toolbox. I think that's the best way to describe it. Because your toolbox, you have a certain number of tools that you've chosen to be in there. A multi-tool has just a whole bunch of different chunk on it that they're small and sort of useful and could be helpful, but you have to kind of rely on what's already built into that multi-tool. You know, that's Bard. It's got a lot of stuff already built into it you kind of rely on. You've got a toolbox that you build for your rogue that you pull out from your selection of tools that you've made, the tools that you think are necessary. So you can see you can use different key ability scores, which will matter for your difference. You get different training in your skills. Because you do get one or more skills determined by your racket. And just the skills equal to 7 plus your intelligence modifier. And stealth that you're trained in. You are trained in a lot of skills as a rogue. And your racket shapes that heavily. Some of them do, some of them don't. You gain special abilities like this one here. The successful identify creature you recall knowledge. It's creatures flat-footed to your attacks to the start of your next turn. Or 1 minute. Trained in society and one other skill of your choice of this list. You can use intelligence. You can see that here. This one, choose a multi-class archetype that has basic, expert, and master spellcasting. That has a master spellcasting feat. You can use dedication feat as a bonus feat, even though to make it charismatic. Must be the characteristics. For you, the magical Trickster Rogue feat has a prerequisite 2nd level instead of 4th. You choose the ability score for the multi-classing archetype. You choose the ability score. So our Eldritch Trickster is all about multi-classing to a spellcasting feat. That's what it kind of is. So you can go a magical route. Then you get Sneak Attack. If you strike a creature that has flat-footed condition with agile or finesse melee weapon, an agile or finesse unarmed attack, or ranged attack, or a ranged unarmed attack, you deal an extra 1d6 points of damage. For ranged attack with a thrown melee weapon, the weapon must be agile or finesse. And as you go on, you increase that damage. And it has to be flat-footed. That's the thing about it. It has to have the flat-footed condition. Flat-footed condition is a lot easier to get than you think. I'm going to say that there. Flat-footed occurs, you know, once you get a -2. There are plenty of places to do that. Which I believe we can look up. One of the major ones here is flanking. When you and an ally flank your foe, it has a hard time defending against you. The creature is flat-footed to melee attacks from creatures that are flanking it. Hey, flanking gives flat-footed. I flank, it gains flat-footed condition. I can also be stealthy, gain that. You get the bonuses like when you are on the first round of combat, you roll deception or stealth for initiative. If you roll perception or stealth for initiative, creatures that haven't acted are flat-footed against you. Again, you make them flat-footed. The object of the rogue is to make things flat-footed so you can sneak attack them. Also, you gain skill. Again, skill increases every other level. Still have the certain times where you have to be. You have to be trained first. You have to be 7th level to get master, 15th level to get legendary. They have other various abilities that are built off of that, and eventually get debilitating strike, which is a special type of strike that it's against a flat-footed creature and deals damage, which it happens, and master strike, which you can see. You strike your trigger. Your strike hits a target flat-footed creature and deals damage. It does some things to it. Otherwise, rogue. Lots of skills. Lots of skills. All the skills in the world. And they're really good at sudden burst damage. That's the thing is, they're big on, hey, that one guy, I'm going to take advantage of the situation and do big old strikes. That sneak attack them. And their sneak attack goes up. Now, their sneak attack doesn't nearly go up as high as either of the other editions. It goes up to 4d6. And you're saying, that's not a whole lot of damage. Well, think about this. They already get 3 attacks a turn anyway. You know, you're already dealing with something that you get 3 attacks. You have feats that make it that you're gaining bonuses, making it harder for them to notice that they're more flat-footed, that they have penalties. You're making it easier that you're going to be doing 3 sneak attacks in a turn. So unlike 5th edition where you only get 1, similar to 1st edition Pathfinder, 5th edition DD, you get a bunch of sneak attacks. Stab, stab, stab. But that's rogue. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, not always, because it's the path you kind of took, your way that you go about it in your criminal underworld, with your, you know, again, rogues are, kind of have this kind of roguish, you still kind of got that kind of crime kind of level of thing, you know, that you, not necessarily that you can call yourself a criminal in the way that a lot of people would think, like if you're not taking like the exact fief, you're still from the underside of the city, the lower side of the city. You're like, you know, in that element of it. We have 2 more to talk about, Sorcerer and Wizard, for today. Sorcerer uses Charisma. Hey, Sorcerer. Sorcerer is like Bard. I think that's the first thing I'm going to say about this. In 2 ways. A, you use Charisma, and B, you're casting spells. So it's all about spell casting. You're very charismatic. You know, your knowledge about magic. So, your spellcasting tradition is indicated by your bloodline. That's words that I'm going to highlight them here. Look at that. Indicated by your bloodline. So there's some similarities to the Bard. We got the same chart. Hey, we have a spell repertoire that we act just like that. We have signature spells, just like a Bard. We have heightened spells and cantrips, and we know spells just like a Bard with a spell repertoire. But the main difference between a Bard, which has all its it has its spells, its focus spells and stuff like that that Bards get, and its Bard abilities, you get a bloodline. Click on bloodline. So, bloodline gives you spells to your spell list. Bloodlines tell you your spell list. You get skills. So if we go back here for a second, you can see skills, bloodline, plus some bonuses. You get some... Oh, sorry. I will switch picture. Thank you. To Sione. You get granted spells. You automatically add spells of this list to your spell repertoire. So you get a cantrip and a first level spell and additional spells as you level up from your bloodline. You get a automatically gain the initiate bloodline spell at first level, which I believe is the basically you get focus pool. So that's one of the things here. Is like, look, and you gain a focus pool. You know, the bloodline spells. Look at here. Oh, look at this, a focus spell. And when you get feats, and you can get advanced bloodline and greater bloodline feats later on, and get these spells here. And you get blood magic, and you can use focus points. Whenever you cast a spell using focus points or a granted spell from your bloodline using a spell slot, you gain a blood magic effect. So it's kind of wild magic-y. That, if you're talking about like 5th edition, that once you use a focus spell or a spell granted to you by your ability, something happens. Let's take a look at one of them. Aberrant. Use the occult spell list, the exact same one that Bard has. You get Intimidation and Cultism. You get Daze, Spider Sting, Touch of Idiocy. So you get spells up to 9th level. You get Tentacular Limbs as a focus spell. you get a focus point. And then if you take the feats advanced bloodline, because you get the initiate bloodlines, you know, you have a focus spell, so you've got 1 focus point. When you get these, that gives you more focus pool. That's the thing, it's advanced bloodline and greater bloodline. Gives you more focus pool. It also gives you aberrant whispers and unusual anatomy. And aberrant whispers shield your mind, one target's mind or your own, granting a +2 status bonus to will save for 1 round once you use one of these abilities. So basically, each time you use one of these abilities from one of these various ones, and there's like, oh look, there's a draconic one where you choose a dragon type, elemental, choose an elemental type, fae, genie, hag, imperial nymph, phoenix, which is uncommon, psychopob, shadow, undead, worm blessed, which is for more unusual dragons and stuff, which is kind of it's similar to the draconic bloodline, but it's kind of a different version of it that kind of exists. More bloodlines could be made in the future, but think about this. And look here, angelic, you get divine list. Same with demonic, Debauch, arcane from draconic, primal from elemental. Sorcerer is the one class that I could have 4 different sorcerers, and each of them has a completely different spell list. That's an important thing to mention here. A completely different spell list to work off of. And that means completely different types of spells. Completely. So it makes a big difference what kind of sorcerer you are. And you gain all the other abilities, like kind of like a sorcerer, but your bloodline determines a lot. Now. See, you get things like bloodline grants you divine spells. You get extra bonuses. Bloodline grants you occult spells. Bloodline grants you primal spells. There's the advanced bloodline, where you get the new spell and more bonuses. So you get a lot of cross-blood evolution at 8th level. You can, which is kind of an interesting one. You can have 1 spell in your spell repertoire from a tradition other than the one that matches your bloodline. You may cast a spell as a spell from your tradition's bloodline's tradition. You can swap the spell which you add and tradition any other. You can swap the spell you add and from which tradition as you could any other sorcerer spell, but you can't have more than 1 spell from another tradition on your spell repertoire. So basically, the same thing of like switching spells out when you level up and when you train to switch out spells. You take that feat. You know, I can get a signature spell expansion, get more signature spells. So yeah. And there's a greater crossblood evolution. Really? Is that cool? Ah, there it is. Where is that? Greater crossblood evolution. Oh, greater bloodline, too. So it's like a lot of things that, like, affect your thing here. 3 spells from other traditions at 18th level. But there's versatility in spells for a sorcerer. So you see here, that's what a sorcerer is. Versatility in spells. They have a bloodline that grants them additional abilities, and when they use some of those bloodline spells, they grant bonuses to people. They only last a round, but they're still there. And then they have this versatility that's down in there. And they oftentimes will have a whole bunch of focus spells, which will be able to use, which they could use into combat before refreshing. They have made sorcerers very unique in a good way. It's very unique in comparison to, like, because again, first edition Pathfinder sorcerers who are spellcasters with their bloodlines that are using these like spells that are inherent to them that they kind of learn naturally. They are just known casters, as you call them, for wizards. They're basically very similar. 5th edition separated out sorcerers and, you know, wizards kind of, but made them pretty different. And honestly speaking, sorcerers suffer from kind of like the different spell list and stuff. You know, there are ways that it's more interesting that they try to diversify. They really made sorcerer their own thing here, as it's sort of like I have a huge versatility because I have magic blood in my body that gives me this kind of versatility of like, here's my basic thing, I can make it more versatile. I could be an arcane caster and throw some healing spells in the mix. I could be a primal caster and throw some more explodey spells in the mix. I could be a vine caster and throw some arcane protections in the or like interesting abilities in the mix. I could mix and match these things and create this ability and deep dive into my bloodline to make it very interesting. And with the large amount of focus spells, which you have this almost kind of encouragement to get more focus points and more powerful focus spells, dive deeper into your bloodline. It's very interesting that you gain these abilities that focus on your bloodline in a way. Sorcerers have evolved in a way that makes them very different from Wizard in a good way. And I think the separation that they were trying for in 5th edition, they really kind of hammer it down here that it's this own thing of like spellcasters that rely on their blood. But then we have to talk about the last one here, Wizard. Hey, you're imp-based. We got an imp-based class other than the Mastermind Rogue here. They are going to not be in direct combat. They're spellcasters. They're going to use powerful spells, cantrips to weaken their foes. They have trick spells, masters of arcane knowledge, and they're going to use that arcane knowledge to help explore and stuff. There. You get arcane spells. We'll change the picture here to our last person here. Ezrin. Good old Ezrin. So, you get arcane spellcasting. It has heightened spells, cantrips. Unlike the Cleric, unlike the Druid, more similar to an Alchemist, you have a spell book, which has a selection of your spells you know in it. It starts with 10 cantrips and 5 first-level spells. I can only memorize per day 5 cantrips, 2 first-level spells. You can add spells to your book when you level up, or you can copy more ones that you discover on your adventure. You can use the arcane spell to learn more spells. So wizards have a disadvantage in comparison to a cleric and druid, that they are limited by your book. What do I have in my book? What do I know? That is what my limit is for the arcane spellcasting. But in comparison to cleric, to druid, to any of the other spell lists, arcane spells have some very high potency. That is their advantage. If I'm going to explode something and kill it with spells, you're probably going to want to be a wizard. You want to go to hit the arcane list. So, they have a limiting factor that is indeed a little similar to a sorcerer in a way. You know, a sorcerer with the arcane list. So, you can get an arcane school. Arcane schools are the school of magic you focus in. When you choose an arcane school, you gain a first level spell of that school to your spellbook, and you learn a focus spell of that school to your spellbook. Pretty simple like that. I will tell you, we're not going to talk about it now. There is an arcane thesis we're looking about here in the core rulebook. We'll talk about the arcanes because... Sorry. So, arcane school is a specialization in a type of magic. There is a universalist. Universalists, you get some extra abilities for being someone that's very generalized. I will tell you. The thing about it is, it sounds like, you think, oh, it's really kind of nice and stuff. Well, you don't get a focus spell the same way. In return for not getting a focus spell at first level, by being a universalist, not getting that free focus spell, you get some extra abilities. You get the, once per day as an action, you can drain your bonded item to recall a spell. And you get an extra wizard class feat, and add a first level spell of your choice to your spellbook. So you still kind of end up in the same way, but you don't get the kind of focus spell the same way. And so you have the Arcane Bond here. For each level of wizard spell slots, you can use the Drain Bonded item once per day to recall a spell, instead of only using it once per day. So effectively, when I have 10th level spells, I can use Drain Bonded item 10 times per day as a Universalist. If I'm an Invoker, I can use it once per day. So, and then you get an Arcane Thesis, which is basically a top. That'd be an improved Familiar, Meta Magic Experiment, Spell Blending, Spell Substitution, Staff of Nexus. Spell substitution is an important one. You don't accept the fact that once spells are prepared, they can only be changed until your next preparations, and uncover a shortcut to allow you to substitute spells from prepared. You can spend 10 credits to empty one of your prepared spell slots and prepare a different spell in your spellbook in its place. If you're interrupted, you can do the original one. Effectively, spell substitution is an interesting one if you want versatility in your spells. You prepare once per day, you can spend 10 minutes to switch out spells. That's pretty good. So spell substitution is a good one. Spell blending. Found a hierarchy of spells combining into more powerful spells. When you make preparations, you can trade 2 spell slots at the same level for a bonus spell slot of up to 2 level higher from the traded spell slot. You can exchange as many spell slots available. Bonus spells are a level you can normally cast, and each bonus spell slot must be a different spell level. You can trade spells and blend spells for something more. There's Meta Magic Experiments. You get the Meta Magic Wizard feat of your choice. Improved Familiar Intelligence, Arcane Thesis. Yeah, so those are those. And Staff Nexus. So, you choose a thesis, you choose a school, and you're off to the races. That's a wizard. You dive deep into one type of spell casting. I know there's a way to do spells for a wizard closer to 5e spells, but I forget how to do it. It's something that was introduced later on, but we'll talk about that as a future thing. This is someone that you're studied spells, you kind of master them. You're very you've got your book filled with a lot of different spells. Maybe you don't know all the spells outright, but you can learn your spells and add them to your book. And you have a versatility, and you have some abilities that make up for not being able to cast, all the spells from the spell list. Take that, Cleric and Druid. But those are the 12 base classes. We will have to have another day talking about the other 10 at some point in time. Introducing to you. I can tell you what they are off the top of the list for here. We'll talk about the Investigator, the Magus, the Oracle, the Psychic, the Summoner, the Swashbuckler, Thaumaturgist, Witch, and of course Gunslinger and Inventor. And they are all very interesting classes, but they are... there's some kind of... It might be actually first level Wizard feat or something like that. Honestly, it could be a second level Wizard feat or something like that. Skew materials, reach spells, spellbook prodigy, widen spell, cantrip expansion, conceal spell, non-lethal spell. I have to remember how to do it. There was a way to do it though. I heard about it, but I have to remember how to do it. It's the thing is, they're developing more builds in the ways they do things as they release books and materials. You might not get any major schools, but certainly you could get new arcane theses. Maybe there might be another arcane school that you could do. They could come up with something that'd be more like an elemental school or something like that. They did that in first edition Pathfinder. They haven't introduced those things, but they are introducing new and more exciting stuff. So we will see more classes come up, and we will talk about the rest of the classes, kind of this introduction to them. I've done a good job of going over the basics of what a class has and what all these classes have, and I hope everybody understands, in comparison, if you don't know about them, you know about them now. If that's not playing any game, or if you've played something like Pathfinder First Edition, you understand how they've kind of changed and evolved into Second Edition. And if you've played 5th Edition, you understand how some of these classes compare to what they are in 5th Edition too. So you can see how each of these classes are very different and very, honestly, interesting. They've made them feel very unique to each other in various ways. And there are different ways of playing, and I think that's a good way of doing it, is I can have 22 classes, and if they're all played in a different way, played in an interesting way, they feel like different classes. I don't have to be limited to those ones and just give them archetypes, because it's basically a fighter that's something else. I think that's a limiting factor in 5th edition, is they just put a lot of archetypes and things, and yes, there can be too many classes. That's a little bit of 1st edition problem, that there's a little too much, that certain ones outweigh the others. But I feel like in this one, doing things like you've got some uncommon stuff, and a lot of the decisions they're making these things feel more unique. And at some point soon, I will talk about the rest. So, I think that'll be it for today. I hope everybody had a great rest of your day. Remember to check out my schedule. I talk about it for my streaming schedule and stuff like that, or my YouTube upload schedule. Remember, Tuesdays and Thursdays, tabletop day. I'll figure out what my next one is and let people know. But I hope you learned a few things about Pathfinder 2nd edition in this couple of hours that we spoke. And I hope, if you're looking to look at the classes and think about ones, you've learned enough to get an idea about these. And if you want to learn more, look at the Archives of Nethys here. Dive deep into it. Read about all the abilities. Read about a lot of the feats of that class if it really interests you. But maybe this will give you an idea of what you might be interested in. What direction you might take for choosing a class. And then just dive deep and see, is this for me? What would I build? There's choices. And the entire thing here is controlled choices that are much more controlled than older editions, but giving you a lot more choices. Refined choices is Pathfinder 2nd edition. They've refined choices in a way that you have a lot of choices, but you're still not overwhelmed by those choices. That's the thing. There's always stuff that limits your choices, but gives you selection. I have all these skill feat choices, but I'm limited by my training and my skills and what skills I chose. I have all these class ones. I'm limited by my level, or maybe a couple choices I made early on in my character. I've already taken a feat that might be needed for another one. I'm controlled in my choices a lot more than older editions. So, anyway, hope you enjoyed. Until the next time I talk about Pathfinder 2nd edition or any other tabletop game, I bid all of you out there a great farewell and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.